Well, hello, I'm here with Caitlin, as you can see, and we're going to talk about signature timestamp forgery. But first, protein folding. My background image over here shows this thing where it claims it can generate a new protein in 8 seconds, although it wasn't very clear from the short article whether it was actually doing it in 8 seconds or they're just displaying the results in 8 seconds. But anyway, this black thing here is an insulin receptor. And it designs these 3 coiled things above it as a protein to bind to the insulin receptor using what sounds like essentially stable diffusion. They start with white noise and they de-blur it to get to the protein, and it takes just a few seconds. So this is a new protein that will bind insulin receptors, which is probably important to treat diabetes, as it looks like what they're trying to do. And this shows how they're able to design new drugs rapidly using AI that will bind to an existing biological material. And then you just have to manufacture this stuff and test it to see how useful it is. But it's bloody awesome. We should be able to make custom designer drugs this way and create new compounds that are not present in nature and yet have important biological activity. So it's a giant leap forward. And, this is protein folding is what I did my PhD thesis on in the dim, distant past when it was much, much, much more primitive. And I modeled the whole protein as like one clothespin with one spring and 1 degree of freedom. And someone on my thesis defense committee, the particle physicist, said, "This is appalling. This model could have been done in 1730. You must be able to do better than that." And we all vigorously said, no, we can't do better than that. This is the state of the art. And it was. But things have progressed since then to a much better state of the art. So I'm thrilled. And Caitlin's got a rocket that blows up.
Yeah, so poor Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin is having some more problems apparently. So according to CNBC and Michael Sheet over at CNBC, on June 30th at a West Texas facility, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, the BE4 engine just blew up completely. It damaged a bunch of stuff in the area. No one was hurt, thankfully. And this is a problem because they were going to be putting these engines in some new rockets that they were going to be sending over to the ULA soon. Now, apparently, the Blue Origin has already contacted ULA as soon as it happened and explained the situation. This is going to obviously cause some delays as they try to figure out why the engine blew up. But of course, this is why you do engines. And of course, this engine is going into the Vulcan flight engine vehicle. And so it's just, this is going to require, more delays before Blue Origin can get their Vulcan rockets up onto the ULA platforms and ready for use.
But it was just a test, right? So
yeah, it was a test. But they were so what makes this really bad for Blue Origin is that this was not an early test. This was an end stage test. So they were already planning on shipping these engines over to be used by ULA. But now they have to go back and figure out what went wrong, redesign the engines, reproduce them, redesign them, get them built, and then sent over. So it's going to cause some significant delay. And this happened little over a week ago. And it's just coming out now that this happened.
And nobody got hurt, I hope.
No, everyone was safe. This was a test.
Good.
Thankfully so.
Yeah, all right. Well, the San Francisco just approved letting the cruise automatic taxis run 24 hours. And then they had some kind of delay in the public hearings to address this, but apparently they are running 24 hours and they don't work. What they do is the robotaxis are getting stuck going around in circles all night long, over and over and over again, apparently making a lot of noise and irritating the neighbors. And the neighbors are freaked out and calling them and they don't get any answer. They can't get any explanation. They say, "This isn't AI. It's not learning anything. It's just going around a loop endlessly around my house, driving me nuts." And one guy has gone to stand in the street in front of them, stopping them all. Apparently a bunch of them all get stuck in these doom loops and just keep going around. And I read a lot of complaints about this. These taxis just seem to be too stupid to really be used on the open road this way. They cannot figure out what police tape is and just sort of nudge their way into a crime scene. They stop in the middle of the block and block like fire trucks and stuff. And in general, the San Francisco residents are not pleased at these robot taxis, but there's a ton of them there, and they don't seem to be able to get hold of anybody that can get rid of them or fix them. So hopefully they'll add some customer service to this or delay their approval or something. But anyway, they're not the glorious utopia that some of us had hoped they would be. And anyway, this is now we finally get to Caitlin that has the signature timestamp forgery, which is pretty
Yeah,
awesome. I'll have you say.
it is absolutely awesome. So Dan Gooden, who's been featured on this podcast many times before over at Ars Technica, thank you, Dan. We appreciate all the work you help us with. Has an article on Ars Technica, and I'll throw it here up on the screen. So hackers once again use game cheating software to hack systems profoundly. So what's going on? Well, one of the issues with cheating in games is being able to upload kernel drivers into Windows and using that to edit memory, essentially, so that you can, cheat at your video games. And these solutions and these projects have been around for a few years now, but recently hackers have realized, oh, wait, we can sign our own stuff, throw it in the kernel, and run stuff. This is amazing. So there's two projects particularly involved in this. So it's the first one is hook sign tool, and it's all in Chinese. You'll have to translate this. But yeah, it does some timestamp nonsense to be able to sign executables and sign drivers and stuff. The other one is F cert verify time validity. And it does something very similar. And they're all free on GitHub. They've been around for a while. This was last updated 5 years ago. And yeah, you can use these to essentially bypass certificate restrictions built into Windows, which gets you access to a lot of stuff.
They both work by detours, which is amazing. Detours is one of the many Microsoft technologies that lets you interrupt code execution and alter it. And so they go through the code signing process and get to the point where it's about to assign the date, and then add extra code to change the date to the wrong date, and then sign it. So it appears to have been signed by a driver from 2015. And when Microsoft added driver signature enforcement to Vista, they grandfathered in the old drivers signed before that time that couldn't pass the test.
Right.
So they trick it into thinking it is one of those legacy drivers.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, Microsoft has claimed that they're going to make a deny list of forbidden drivers to stop the bring your own vulnerable drivers test, although they never seem to have actually gotten that working. They've been promising it for months or a year, and somehow it never works. But it would seem like they could just add the products of this tool to that list of forbidden drivers, and that would fix the problem. But somehow Microsoft is failing at giving us any defense to the bring your own driver attack, which is essentially what this is.
Well, the thing that's frustrating is that I could understand if Microsoft does not want to patch like Windows Vista era Windows or Windows 8 era Windows 7 or 8, because it's very likely if you're using one of these drivers, you're on a very old system, right?
Well, not if you're using malware.
Right, but the only reason I can think of that these old drivers would be in use in Windows 10 or 11 is for malware. So it seems like maybe just updating the most recent version of Windows, to break compatibility with a few things that require Windows Vista anyway, seems like a no-brainer, but they're just not doing it.
Yeah. And they also added they promised with great trumpets that they had added a deny list of drivers to end the bring your own vulnerable driver attacks, which have been going on for more than a year. And yet their product just doesn't work. There is nothing in the list. Now it seemed to me like your antivirus could block this, and maybe it should. But Microsoft is just asleep at the switch here.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Google is making augmented reality. They made the Google glasses, then they canceled them, then they brought them back. Now they've canceled them again. There's a team designing these augmented reality gadgets. Now the latest plan is they say, well, we aren't going to make any augmented reality hardware. Maybe we'll just make augmented reality software and license it to other companies who will make the hardware. And the head of the AR software just quit, saying, this is crazy. These guys don't know what they're doing. They keep changing their mind. All my work is wasted. And he's just going to quit. And not clear where he goes, but I would imagine he'll go to a startup making the thing. Google just seems to be spinning their wheels and losing their direction ever since Google Glass. And, this is pretty bad, right? Who's got the latest augmented reality thing? It's Apple. And that thing seems to be questionable. The thing cost $3,500 and they just scaled down the production run. So it sort of suggests that there's less demand for it than they had hoped. And, but Google seems very unconvinced. This reminds me of what Scott Galloway says. Scott Galloway says this whole thing is stupid. Nobody's going to put some kind of clunky box on their head that makes them look stupid. Until you make this thing really small and practically invisible and light and comfortable, you're never going to sell enough of them for anybody to want it. And maybe that's true. Everybody making them seems to be sort of hitting roadblocks and giving up.
The problem is that this is a weird technology where you can't ramp up to the end game, right? Like computers in the 80s, people bought them. They weren't very good, but they were still kind of useful. And then in the 90s, you upgraded your computer and so on. That doesn't seem to be a feasible option with VR. It either has to be perfect or nothing.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And they say the Apple device really is very good, but it's too expensive and it still is not really good enough. And if I could just buy a pair of glasses that overlaid, my emails and facts and stuff like ChatGPT answering my questions right in my vision, that would be awesome. But it would have to really work.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Apple's move was both good and bad, in the sense that it was really important that some company put out a VR headset that could show people what VR could be, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for $3,500, as a first gen product, I don't think a lot of people are going to want to invest that much.
3,500.
3,500.
Yeah. That's too much money. And apparently it's still not even good enough even at that price.
Right. It looks pretty good from what I've seen. I mean, if you can read text in it, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it, does some other things too. And apparently it has it reads gestures very well from your fingers and focuses on AR, which I think is key.
Yeah.
The problem though is the price point. If Apple made that at $500, it would fly off the shelves. It would be everybody's. Yeah.
It's like Tony Stark and Iron Man, right? He just reaches out and manipulates things and they move around, which is what you want.
Yeah. At $500, that thing would be fantastic. At $1,000, a lot of enthusiasts would get it, right?
Yeah.
At $2,000, and maybe not. 3,500. That's a rich people's toy. I mean, it's well, and a few engineers might make use of it, but it's not going to go mainstream like the iPad or the Apple Watch or anything like that.
Yeah, you might want to target the enterprise or something, but anyway.
Yeah.
All right, and you've got a new lunar rover.
Yeah, so we finally see the end result of Viper here. So here it is. This is from Popular Science. And we see on the screen is, I don't know if I can zoom in that much. No, I can't. But rolling down that platform is the sort of final-ish version of the Viper rover. So previously it was sort of a bit more boxy, and now it has that nice white covering. And it has, this is basically what it's going to look like when it goes to the moon. So what is Viper? Viper is a fantastic little rover. It stands for the Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, VIPER. NASA loves acronyms. And yeah, it's rolling down the ramp and is getting ready to start going onto lunar regolith in 2024, which is very good to see. I think I can discuss this now. So that was one of the projects that I worked on when I was at NASA, was this little rover, which is a lot of fun. So it's, for me personally, I love seeing Viper, roll down, and I had a small part in that, but it's still
great,
very special to me.
So if it fails, it's all your fault.
If someone hacks Viper, yeah, it's all my fault, pretty much. You're not hacking.
I've heard of people actually hacking NASA space vehicles very much. It doesn't seem to happen, or else I don't hear about it.
You don't hear about it.
Okay, well, it could be. All right. Well, I think that's it for this one. And we'll have another one on Friday later in the day again, because I'm teaching all day in the morning. And we'll carry on.